Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Our webinar today is the first in a new series of 3 about building a coaching capability and culture internally in organizations. And the first one is why? Why do your leaders need coaching skills? And if they do, what does that result in? What can happen? I'm delighted to have Coach Mindy here with me today from Churchill.
Hello, everyone.
We're in very good hands with Mindy's experience. The learning objectives of this webinar today are, as you can see on the screen, what is a leader coach? What do we mean by that term? And how is it different to a regular leader, a non-leader coach? Why do organizations initially want to build a coaching capability? And what do they get from it once they start to do so? And how do you get started? So as usual, we'll be as practical as we can be. I will, for those that aren't familiar with Churchill, just take about 3 minutes here to run through some Churchill background. We are a leadership and team organization. We were founded to harness the untapped talent in employees and leaders in the corporate and government world, as well as grow soft skills, leadership skills. We operate in multiple regions around the world, including North America, Latin America, EMEA, and APAC. And we deliver our work with an incredible over 200 executive coaches who act as superb coaches, as well as consultants and trainers. Here are some of our clients by industry. We do a lot with healthcare and finance technology, as well as US government agencies, as well as other industries and organizations that you, I'm sure, will recognize. We consciously have built a diverse team of coaches, diversity from many different lenses. And here is just a snapshot of them. And we do that because we feel it represents our audience and is what's needed in order to bring the best value to you. You can see our global footprint. Each red dot doesn't represent a coach, more like a group of coaches, just to see a visual distribution across the globe. And we fundamentally deliver 5 core programs. We're known for 5 signature solutions, as you can see on the screen. Executive or leadership coaching, from everything from your C-suite down to first-line leaders or high potentials. Team coaching, where intact teams are coaching. We have 4 different programs in that specialty. Leaders coach is in red because that's what we're going to focus on today. Then we also have manager effectiveness programs for managers that are brand new managers starting out, or for managers that are more tenured in their experience. And finally, we have building a strengths-based organization. So that might be a team, a division, a whole organization. Although all of our programs are accelerated using a strengths methodology. And I'm delighted to say, particularly with COVID, all of our programs are deliverable remotely as well as in person. Mindy, I was just talking to Connie, sorry about that. Mindy, please share, for those that don't know you, just share a little about you.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Mindy Morrow. I'm based in Ohio. I've been working with Churchill for the last 6 years, and I've been in the field of leadership, organization development, change, and training for over 30 years. And so I started off my career as a leader coach, just like many of you on this call are. So I've sat in your chair and I've walked in some of the same pathways and journeys you have, and I'm happy to bring my expertise in both worlds as a leader and an expert coach. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Jayne today.
Thank you, Mindy, and I really appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule with clients to be with us. Like Mindy, I learned to coach as a leader coach. More years than I'd like to remember, about 22 years ago now. So I went from being a leader to a leader coach. And so I know what that felt like. I know the shift it took and the benefits, and then also can view the world from the position of an executive coach. And that's why Mindy and I chose to pair up to do this, is that we've both experienced both sides, so we bring that wealth of experience to you. Most of my job now is not doing the coaching work because we have so many amazing coaches, they don't need me to do that anymore. It's more about running the company. And so I get to work with heads of HR, senior executives, as they're trying to figure out what problems they're trying to solve and what solutions they need. And so I get to see that diverse view globally of the trends in the needs and in the solutions. So between us, we can share as much as we can in the time we have today. So we're going to take this as more of an interview back and forth discussion. And the first question
Yeah.
is one, yeah, over to you,
Yeah.
Mindy.
First of all, I'm curious, and I think this is great that we're just having a conversation, because I think this is really role modeling what coaching is. What do you think are the primary differences, Jayne, between a leader and a leader coach?
Yeah, I think this is an important question to give clarity about what we're talking about, because without giving clarity, there are misconceptions. And so when I think about a leader coach, it's worth starting with what it is not. Most leaders are probably doing some one or more of these to a degree on a regular basis. They might be in training mode, in pockets or lots of training for their employees. It's not that. That's not coaching. They typically are doing a lot of directing or telling, giving instruction about what needs to be done by when to their teams. And finally, mentoring. They might be mentoring team members around where they've come from and how to do it based on their experience. And all of these have a valuable place in the role of a leader that's leading people. Um, but it leaves a hole. It leaves a hole of empowering people to come up with solutions for themselves. So a lot of research has told us that being able to coach in a role of leading people is huge for a couple of reasons. And so the shift in three sort of simple buckets, the way I describe leader to leader coach, is it's a mindset shift.
Mhm.
Often when we work with leaders, we see this very clearly. They come in thinking their job is, and this is why the organization wants to do it, their job is to deliver on the business. And goodness, we all want that. It's about the operations, it's about the tasks, it's about moving the business forward from an execution perspective. It's getting stuff done. And they don't leave space for developing their people. So the mindset shift is, how do I deliver more business, more execution, more projects on time and better by also delivering my people? So my role expands even with the time I've got, and that's very doable. You don't have to find another day a week to be a leader coach, is a mindset shift. Is my role is execution and development of myself and my team when I'm a leader coach. The other shift is thinking that way is one thing, but goodness, how do I do it? Right? So we have to build the skill. And predominantly, the skills that a leader coach need can be core, simple coaching skills where they recognize by using different skills, they don't have to provide the answers all the time to their people. And this is where the empowerment comes in. So they need to be taught new skills, new capabilities. And the final thing is the difference is impact. Because if you are a leader and you're telling people what to do, often they're then coming to you for, can I do this? Should I do this? Is this the right approach? You become the roadblock.
Yeah.
But when you're coaching and getting them to figure out things for themselves and the right way forward, they're more empowered and they're not relying on you in so many ways. So less roadblocks, better solutions because you're getting new ideas, more ideas from your team. They're more engaged because they're more owning it. And that frees up the leader to be more strategic. And I think I'll share one thing before asking you to add to this, Mindy,
Yeah.
is when I became a leader coach, when I had that mindset shift, learned the skills, I realized big time that, oh my God, I was getting in the way of my team and I didn't know how good my team could be because I was too busy giving them the answers. I didn't give them that space to be who they could be. Mindy?
I was just going to build on that, Jayne. It's such a great point. When I made this journey my first time as well, I thought my role was to have all the answers. I thought that's what my boss expected of me. And I realized I didn't even know and understand the potential that my team members brought to the table. And once I started listening more and really discovering more about them, not only did they become more able to solve their own problems, but it freed me up to do more of my job, which was to look forward and prepare us for tomorrow. So I had the very
Yeah.
similar journey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the freeing up to think, I think, was just felt so good for me,
Yeah,
right? Like thinking of better ways we could do things, thinking about spending more time with customers, I think is one of the things that I enjoy doing around not only what are their needs today, but what are their needs in the future. And being able to bring that insight back to my team to say, okay, how can we prepare ourselves for the future to meet their current and future needs
exactly.
was another space. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
can,
hear a lot about, oh, I'm sorry, you hear a lot about organizations wanting to push decision making and problem solving to the edges of their organization, to the people that are closest to the customer and closest to the work. And that doesn't happen. It can happen and be facilitated by having great leader coaches. It typically doesn't happen because leaders are still involved in what you shared earlier, which is solving, telling, directing. So it's an important
yeah.
shift and one that really opens up opportunities in the organization.
You mentioned a good point there because I do hear that a lot. Why do you think organizations want to shift the decision making lower in the organization?
Because the people closest to the work know more. They know better. They know the customers more. They know the processes that are helping facilitate making their decisions to make the customer's job and life better. And they know the processes and decisions and policies that are getting in the way. So that was the other thing I experienced in my own journey was the ideas that my team had were better than mine. They were more creative
Mm,
than mine. They didn't necessarily take more resources, but they certainly served the customer or whatever our team's role was better. And
yeah.
it never ceased to amaze me the power and creativity that was unleashed on my teams when I got out of the way.
It reminds me of something, and we're definitely moving into our second question here of something where my son, who's now 20, was at Montessori as a young child, and there was a poster in the library, and it said, never do any, and it was a little boy trying to tie his own shoes, and it said, never do anything for your child that they can do for themselves. And I learned that as a really strong lesson as a parent. That served me and our son well, and yet we still do it in the workplace.
We do.
Right? We hire great people, then we tell them what to do. And
Yeah.
there's a better way, which is being a leader coach.
Yes.
So I think we've already started to go into this space here. Mindy, what goes through your mind when you think, if we think about this is like before organizations start to invest in building a coaching culture and capability, what goes through their mind? What triggers it? Why do they want to do this?
Well, I think that's a great question, Jane. And the first thing I would say is the most important, and this is something Churchill will help you do, is get really, really clear on the business or organization goal that you want to achieve that's just out of reach. The one that you want to do that's better, how you can increase performance or how you can overcome something, a challenge in the business that you haven't overcome, whether it's innovation, whether it's a better cost structure, whether it's a better competitive position, whatever the business or organization goal is the place to start when you think about building coaching culture. Because if it's not tied to the business goal or outcome, then it'll just become, like you said something earlier, something else for managers and leaders to do versus the way we get our goals and objectives achieved as well as grow people. So I think the business reasons, number one, and to execute better. We know that
Mm,
organizations that build coaching capability outperform organizations that don't. And it's another way to differentiate your organization. I can tell you, when you look at some of the generational impacts that are happening with millennials in the workforce and Gen Z right behind them, people are coming into the workforce, whether it's a business, nonprofit, government organization, they want to be coached. They want to be developed. They want to have all this opportunity in front of them. And they're okay owning their own development, but they want the support of somebody who cares and will help them facilitate that growth. So it's a huge way to differentiate your organization and better compete
yeah.
in the talent marketplace. And then I guess the final thing I'll say is, again, if you build coaching and coaching capability, your teams will start coaching each other. So it's not just leader coaches, it becomes peer coaching, and coaching becomes something embedded in your organization that helps you serve your people better, grow your people better, and engage your teams and people better.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's definitely the culture piece, right? So I'm not a culture change expert as a coach. That's not my space. I do think of culture in very simplistic terms for me to think about it and sort of talk to other people about it. And when I think of culture, I'm like, it to me, it's like, what does it feel like to work around here?
Yes.
right? Describe the culture is describe what it feels like to work in your organization. And a coaching culture is exactly sort of, you're starting to talk about what that is it's not just I now can coach my team members. It's when, as peers, we're talking, when I'm having conversations with my boss, I'm using some of those coaching skills. I'm listening more carefully. I am staying present. I'm asking more powerful questions than I would have done before because I've been trained as a coach.
Yes.
And that makes the conversation better because really, very often what we hear in this space is our people want more feedback.
Yes.
So we want to start coaching. Our organization is in conversations all day through Zoom nowadays, through meetings prior to this. And those conversations have to count more. We're having like these meetings that are sort of mind-blowingly not productive. And we can change the meeting process, that's part of it, but we have to change the conversation. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's making the conversations we're having at work more productive, more inspirational, more expanding, giving meaningful feedback, and not having to wait for once or twice a year to do it.
Right.
The other thing that I hear you talk about a lot, Mindy, is you describe coaching as a leadership strategy.
It is.
Tell us a little more about that, please.
It really is. And this is sort of, thinking on a more systemic level of what are we doing to develop our employees and what are we doing to develop our leaders? What are the tools and frameworks and skills that we're putting in place for both entities to grow? And I believe, and I've seen this in my own experience, that investing in building coaching skills in leaders is actually a leadership development strategy. It's a way to grow leaders because they're focused on growth, not only themselves, but in being a function of growth or a stand for growth in employees. And again, when I started off as a leader, I thought that my job was to get things done, tell people what to do. I never really had thought about or embraced my role in terms of growing my people. So it's that mindset shift that you talked about earlier, and it can also be a really powerful strategy for developing and growing leaders within your organization.
Thank you, Mindy.
I was to say one more quick thing, Jayne, is so Churchill is a strengths-based organization, and we do a lot of work with leaders and managers and teams, really understanding and focusing on building their strengths. Another reason you'd want to build a coaching culture and capability is back to that point you made, Jayne, about the quality of the conversation. We as managers either ignore our employees typically because we've got so much to do, or we're focused on talking with people about what's broken or their weaknesses. And what we know from research is if managers discover and help employees discover their strengths, they're likely to be more engaged, they're likely to be incredibly more productive, and they're likely to get a lot more done. So coaching can also be a pathway to really helping organizations identify and become strengths oriented and so much more productive down the line.
Yeah. You know what always goes to my mind when we talk about strengths, which we do all of the time, and we do use Strengths Finder as a tool and a common language with clients, is it also supports a diversity and inclusion strategy because my top 5 are totally different to your top 5. And if I have got a leader that's a coach and can have conversations with me that really help me harness those talents in my work, I'm going to grow more than in any other environment I would. And you will do the same, but you will be different because you have the top 5 that's different to me. And so it really sort of honors the diversity of our natural talent. Although we might be doing the same job, our approach to success will be different, and that's part of the strength. So whenever we do Leaders Coach as a program, we start with Leaders Coach, which is like really getting people proficient at coaching. Then the phase 2 is accelerate it with strengths, and we bring strengths in. And the third part of it over time is now let's think about team coaching. And
Yes.
so I know we're very much getting into webinar number 2 and 3 here, but we can't help ourselves, right? So a lot of what we talked about is empowerment. And I think you touched on this in that where is the demand for employee development coming from nowadays? I mean, when I started in the industry and I was in pharmaceuticals, which is a very established develop your people industry, it came from the top down almost. Like they decided we were going to get developed, they put things in place, and that is a total shift now 30 years later,
Yes.
right? Because it's very much Millennials, I know we talk about it because they're the biggest volume in the workforce. They're demanding it. And before they join an organization, when they interview with an organization, they're like, well, how do you develop? How will you develop me? What opportunity have I got to grow? How will you understand my strengths and harness them? How will you make sure that development is ongoing and not just after orientation? And so this is another reason organizations do it, is to get the talent they want. That talent demands it.
Yes.
And yeah,
And
there
what's
we go.
great about it too, Jayne, is that I've noticed even in the last 10 years of my work independently as a coach and with organizations is people are okay owning their own development path. What they want and crave is the support, right? What else am I thinking of? What else am I not thinking of? So the whole nature of the employee development conversation is changing. And most of the clients we work with at Churchill are just looking for ways to accelerate that. So that's that's really great news.
Yeah, excellent. So our third question of 4 questions is, what benefits do organizations see once they have leader coaches? I mean, we work with organizations, some organizations for over 4 years now, because their people change, they have reorgs, they expand, they take another, and there's always new leaders that need to learn how to coach. So this isn't just, to do this well isn't just like a one workshop and done. We really want to, um, you want to embed the mindset, skill, and ability in coaches. And so it's not like you do this one day and the benefits happen overnight,
Right.
right? This is a strategy. You don't do strategy in a day. So when organizations do this, what are some of the benefits that they start to see?
Well, there's
What would the
actually
C-suite be demanding, right?
right, exactly, exactly. Well, there's actually some really interesting studies and research and data coming out now. We now know, and this is actually just from one organization, Burson Associates, have done studies where coaching culture has been built, coaching capability has been built, and they found that those organizations that build coaching proficiency in their leaders and coaching cultures in terms of expectations actually experience a 13% differential, stronger business results. So I asked my organizations, okay, if your market cap is 84 billion, what would it look like if you were 13% better? And when you're looking at double-digit growth in anything, more eyes than just the C-suites light up. But that is something worth working for. The other thing that they found that was really interesting, Jayne, is that they were 26% more effective at holding costs down and below what their competitors are. So they're actually creating value and investment to reinvest in their business, their government entity, or their organization. As I mentioned earlier, coaching can be a fantastic leadership development strategy, and organizations that embark on this journey find that they are 48% more effective at developing great leaders and a leadership pipeline. And then lastly, the play that we all want, 42% higher employee productivity. And there's so many different studies that are coming out now that show that just a 10-point improvement in employee productivity or employee engagement can directly follow to the bottom line. Net income, margin improvement, all of those really, really hard business key performance indicators that we crave are available when the quality of your conversations are going up, people are more aligned, and they're producing better. And trust is actually being built in the organization as well to do more. So really tangible business results. And I've been in this field so long, Jayne, longer than I care to comment too. I'm thrilled to see that we're actually seeing some empirically, valid studies that are coming out and showing that these types of programs and these types of commitments are actually having a great impact on business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting around holding down costs. I know when I first saw this data, I was like, yeah, how does that work? And then as I've observed over time, as we've helped develop leader coaches across multiple organizations around the globe, it's really decision making,
Yes.
right? It's, when you're told what to do, which is what a lot of managers do, and we're not just talking about leader coaches at the first line manager. You need leader coaches at all levels of your organization, including in HR. And it's when everyone is empowered to bring their ideas to the table, you start to get more efficient
Yeah.
with spend, with decisions, etc. And I'll add one piece here, that third bullet about 48 more effective at developing great leaders. That's huge. And when Burson looked at all the different strategies that an organization can take on to develop leaders, coaching came to the top.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if an organization is going to invest in something, it is this space that they need to seriously consider. So, one of the other things that we looked at Churchill, and it really was in response to a client request, is from a stakeholder perspective. If we develop leader coaches, how would different parts of our organization benefit? And so this is what we've tried to sort of illustrate here in this one slide. We've touched a little on more conversations count, and most organizations are asking, like, our managers need to give more feedback they need to have more conversations, and in those conversations be effective at giving feedback. They
Yes.
need to have career conversations, because those are the things that tend to drop off. And when those happen, various people in the organization benefit. The employee, of course, they're getting what they're asking for. The leader coach is equipped to do it. Senior leaders get less complaints, and less problems bubble up to HR and senior leaders because these conversations are happening. So all around, it's a very good investment for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Your space as a coach, one of your specialties is innovation, Mindy. You're a certified innovation coach and consultant. Talk to the second one a little, why that you think is important.
Yes, and I'm so glad you highlighted that. In fact, I was going to talk about that when I looked at the previous slide. Again, it reminded me, one of our clients, Johns Hopkins Applied Lab, their whole purpose for engaging and building coaching capability in their leaders was innovation. They knew that they were very aware, and they're very intentional that what's gotten us here won't necessarily carry us into the future. And one of the things that they and many of the other clients that I've worked with are focusing on around innovation is, I want people to better vet their own ideas. And senior teams don't want to be the bottleneck and having to understand and vet and weigh the risks of some of the really great ideas and programs that their people are bringing. So by developing coaching capability, those ideas are being vetted more and more closely by the people that are bringing the ideas. So they're vetting, their ideas are being vetted better. They're bringing the better ideas, more ideas are coming into the pipeline, and the quality's going up. So the organization's freed up to do more or run more trials, right? Let's try this and learn, let's try this and fail. But it's actually happening because the quality of conversations is improving, and more people are owning accountability than just the leaders themselves. So vetting, innovation idea pipeline, all of those things are, again, very tangible results that our clients have realized out of investing in coaching with Churchill.
Thank you, Mindy. And what I love about the innovation piece, it goes across all of these stakeholders. The ultimate beneficiary is the customer. And I mean, you mentioned Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. That's one example of their customer is the US government, and in turn, us in the US, even within the globe, of keeping sort of, for example, the country safe. And so the innovation really is for ultimately the customer. So I love that one. I'll go down to the last but one is, when you're coach, like over the years, I've observed and I've been in conversations, and I've done it to employees in my early days of being in a one-on-one and doing all the talking, right? And a one-on-one very much at the least should be a 50-50 conversation, if not about a space for your employee to talk. And when you turn on coaching skills and a mindset, you really are in a lot more of listening mode. Whether you're a VP in a one-on-one with a director, C-suite in a one-on-one with a VP, as leaders, we've got like, okay, my turn to be quiet and really sort of challenge my person to bring out the best they've got, hear their ideas, what are they struggling with, what do they need me to hear, when they come up with ideas, challenging them to make that idea even better. And when an employee has that space to feel heard and understood, that really does drive engagement, and people want to work for your organization because their ideas matter, and we do something
Absolutely.
with them because now they're on the table.
Absolutely. It accelerates learning too, Jane, because if I can learn and fail fast, I develop a better relationship with failure. I'm more confident, and I'm going to try more. So again, there's that freeing up of, it doesn't all have to come from me. The pressure's not all on me. And as a leader, that's why there's so many stakeholders that this benefits as well. As a leader, you've got more people in action. and the growth is exponential. So there's more divergence of ideas than you can converge on the best ones.
Absolutely. And actually, we work with a lot of tech companies, and I think it's the
Yeah.
agile approach in tech companies that really see the value in coaching as much as anyone, because it's like let's revisit, try, revisit. And that's really what coaching
Yeah.
is you're practicing what you've taken from the coaching conversation back to doing your job, and then revisiting back with your leader coach.
Yeah. Never thought about that.
Too.
It's rapid prototyping with humans.
Yeah, there we go.
Only the accountability is on the employee, which, as a leader, freed me up tremendously. Oh, she's got that ball and is going to run with it. Yay.
We can rely on you to bring a creative description too. All right, so we're at our last question.
Yeah, so now I'm convinced my organization's going to be bought into coaching. I've got a clear business reason for doing it. What's the best way to get started?
Yeah, good question. So I think for our audience is benefit, I try and keep things simple in my mind. I can only cope with 3 things at a time. And so you'll see me share out like 3 things. Here we go again. The first one is define why, and don't do it in a vacuum. Sometimes these programs are generated by HR, sometimes they're generated by the business when they see what's going on in their organization. Really, it should do it as a team. And so you can really think through, what will this do for a short term, long term? How do we build it into the fiber of our culture? What do we expect to get from it? Because the more you've got a clearer vision of why you're doing this, the better we can help you do it. And at times when we start to work with an organization, the vision is sort of there, but not as clear as it could be. And we work with them to help them bring even greater clarity. And a clear vision then helps us put a clearer plan in place. The second piece is executive sponsorship, and there are a couple of things on this. I mean, there's more, but a couple I'll share for today. Don't let your executives off the hook for coaching. Very often, senior leaders, very experienced leaders think, hey, I don't need this. My team needs this. The first line, second line leaders need this. And then I've had the opportunity to observe senior leaders, and I'm like, no, you're not doing it. Your team are telling me you're not doing it. I see how you have, they think they're coaching, but it's back to advising and telling. There's a perception that we feel we have to have all the answers, and that just increases when you go up higher in the organization because you sit in those big spots. It really does an organization tremendous good to have coaching be at the top, to have your C-suite and VPs be great coaches, not only to role model for everyone else, but to continue the momentum that when your directors are coaching, they're also getting coached. There's nothing worse than coming out of learning how to coach as a director, and then your VP is doing the old habit. Right?
And just to add to this point, Jayne, this is so critical. One of the research studies that's just come out talks about the fact, and I think Gallup is even starting to incorporate this into their research as well, is to ask the question, when's the last time your boss asked you for feedback? And what we're finding is when you talk about the nature of the conversation and what people are talking about with their employees today, they're typically not asking for feedback. And coaching begins that process of being open to feedback, and coaching proficiency and coaching culture gets so much more quickly adopted when people are just open and asking for feedback from the top as well. So it's just one of those dynamics to really listen and pay attention to your organization. If we're not asking for feedback from our teams, then we really have an opportunity to listen more and engage in this type of work.
And that's a true partnership, right? When feedback goes both ways. And one of the things that we talk about when we do this with clients is it takes trust to coach, and coaching builds trust. And so if you learn to coach and your leaders are learning to coach, and over time, more trust will be built at all levels between leader and employee. So between a CFO and their VP. And the more the trust is there, the more the senior leader is willing to say, can you give me some feedback? They're
Yes.
willing to be a bit more vulnerable because they feel safer.
Yeah.
And I think we know from, oh my gosh, gallons of research, and we're big Gallup research fans because we work so closely with StrengthsFinder and Gallup's work there, that we know from Google that psychological safety is critical in a leader-employee relationship as well as in teams. So trust continues to be a critical factor of business success.
Yes.
The third factor here on the right is the right program for you. And what we've learned over time is we have the core Churchill program, which I'll show you at a very high level in a moment. But then that needs to fit you. So we are very agile in tailoring it to your organization, where you are now versus where you want to get to. We wrap it in change management best practices. Both Mindy and I are change management experts, and so that's a big part of it. And making sure that the coaching program is instilled with practice, and that practice is having coaches practice your business reality, the things that they need to practice to go do this in the business world. They're talking about business situations, and so it really has to fit you. In fact, some clients don't want to call it leader as great coach or leader coach program. They want to call it something different, and that is fine too, as long as the outcome and the skill of the leaders increase. So we've learned to really tailor our programs to make sure it's the right program for you. So here's just a very high snapshot of where we start. I'm going to leave you, Mindy, to talk about the experiential piece of this because I know you're so passionate about it. I'll talk about it from a structure. It's typically 10 to 12 weeks. Starts off with some prep work, and then we do a 2-day workshop, or during COVID or beyond COVID, if it's a global team, that can be a 4-webinar series. Highly interactive. And then we break the bigger groups into cohorts, smaller cohorts, and they work as a cohort then for the rest of the journey, practicing on the job in smaller trios, then coming back in their cohort to work with their Churchill coach. So they learn how to coach in that upfront first week in the workshops or the webinars, start to get into cohorts of practice, and then it's practice from then on, but with the safety and expertise support of their coach. So by the end of the 10, 12 weeks, they are really coaching and don't need as much hand holding, right? They're really out there doing it. So Mindy, talk about the importance of experiential practice.
Well, it's such a great point, Jane, and I'm so glad you brought that up. A lot of organizations out there that are talking about building coaching skills have a model and they've got a process, but they take a very workshop approach. And we believe that the power is really in the practice. Unfortunately, my tennis pro just changed me back to a two-handed backhand. And when I know she did that, I knew what was ahead of me was 10,000 swings. It takes 10,000 swings to affect a change in a tennis shot or a golf shot. Well, I'm not sure how many coaching practices it takes, but it takes the opportunity for the leader coach to really practice the skills that we teach, practice the mindset that we teach, and practice even sort of the layout of how a coaching conversation goes. So they start day 2 in the workshop, and then in the following 10 weeks, we meet together and talk as cohorts, the same people that you worked with in the workshop. We bring real life scenarios and we coach one another. And the coaching is really sort of twofold. One, they get, of course, expert support and expert coaching from us at Churchill, but the participants also really learn how to coach one another. So they meet in trios independently, and then they talk about different scenarios, and then we meet as a cohort with a Churchill coach. So there's several practices and check-ins along the way where things are tried, accountabilities are made, promises are made, and then we follow up and see how it's going. All within a very safe environment, all where people can really just try out what they've learned and get better and better and better. And by the end of the 10 weeks, most people are not only doing it, but they're reporting increased levels of satisfaction and joy in what they're doing.
Yeah.
To open up the conversations with their team. So it's amazing. But one of the things that distinguishes us at Churchill is we're very applied in our programs, and we're very clear about the things that people actually get to do and practice on the job.
Yeah, we're super practical, and I know that was very important to us when we started Churchill, that we didn't want to just be theoretical or conceptual. I mean, you do need the skill, you do need the best practices, you do need the concepts to understand, but it's really by practicing and failing and improving and building confidence and trying that we learn. And if you notice the orange arrow at the bottom, you know, in between these meetups, there's lots of on-the-job practice where these leader coaches are coaching their own people in real world scenarios. So then they come back to these cohorts and trios with, oh, let me tell you what I did, and let me tell you what worked, and help me, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
And so it's important to have a journey. Otherwise, to your point, you do a workshop and you forget. We
Yeah.
call it the forgetting curve, and you go back to old habits. So these are some of the clients that we do it with, and I'm sharing this because, first of all, there's a degree of pride that I know our coaches have in the work that they do globally, and also that you don't have to be a certain industry or a certain part of the world. Coaching is growing everywhere in all industries because it works. And here's just a bit of data from our work at eBay, which continues to be ongoing since 2016. And I just want to call out a couple of pieces of data here. Top left, 98%. This is 300 of the leaders that went through the program. And so this was after the 10 weeks. 98% felt the program made a significant difference on their leadership. So think about that. Almost every leader saw a significant difference. And then the circle next to that was their team was empowered. So that's the scalability. They go back, and because of what they can do now, their team is empowered like almost 70%. Mid number to the right, 23%. I love this because this was a big learning for me. Coaching made me a better parent. I was very, very rarely in tell mode with my child. It was just very much around getting them to slow down and think through their options of decisions, etc. Unless it was of course an emergency situation. And that's what we also find. We ask people to practice coaching at home, and a lot of people find the value is there too.
Yeah.
So
One of my favorite stories from eBay, the eBay world, is a software engineer developer came to, I think it was cohort meetup number 2, and he was so serious, and you could tell he was chomping at the bit to share. And he said, I want to share with my cohort that my team is accomplishing more, I'm doing less, and other people are noticing it. And he just he just was so beaming with pride, because he was one of those people that just really struggled with the mindset. He's, some of the skills, yeah, I get it, but the mindset of just believing his people could do it, and that his job was to support them and get out of the way of solving. I mean, let's face it, we engineers are trained to solve problems, right? And he was just blown away about how much more work his team was doing with him not doing it. And it just, that story sticks with me forever, because he was so blown away about the link between the power of coaching and his team being able to do more and loving it.
yeah, I mean, that in itself is a great success story. Everyone wins,
Yeah.
right? Everyone wins. So it's time to wrap up. I want to say to our audience, this is one of a series of 3, the build. So number 2 is in October, and how we'll go deeper into how to set your leaders up to coach. And the third one is then when they can coach, how do you harness that capability to achieve more in your organization? Strategic initiatives, important goals, local goals, change, all sorts of things. And so if you want more, right, because each of your situations is different, then Mindy or I can spend 30 minutes with you in an exploration call to talk about what you're going through. Sometimes we might have conversations with HR leaders to say, okay, how do I bring this to my business leaders? We've started to talk about it. How do I take the conversation to the next level? So we can help you think through and help you prep for success. It might be that you're ready to go and you're just curious about how our program can fit your organization. Whatever it is, it's complementary. We believe in this. This is our mission in life, is coaching. So feel free to contact us at my email, and Connie, our marketing director, will also follow up in emails to you. You can respond to those. So with that, Mindy, any final words?
I just want to say thank you for letting me be a part of this conversation today. And for those of you listening, I can't wait to engage in conversations and be a thought partner with you on bringing this great skill to your organizations. Thanks, Jayne.
You're welcome. Mindy, thanks for your time today, your expertise, and your great coaching.
You're
Bye,
welcome.
everyone. Have a good
Bye.
one.